Well, welcome back. I hope you had a great week and you're ready to settle down. You have your coffee, you have your Bible, and it's open to the 20th chapter of the book of Job, and we're going to continue our walk together. As you know, this program is brought to you each week by the Port Huron Church of Christ, located at 756 17th Street, right here in the city of Port Huron. Thank you for joining us again. We just really want you to know that we realize that you could be doing other things with your time, but you have determined that you want to spend it with us, and we really appreciate that immensely, and we just can't thank you enough. And if this is your first time, welcome aboard. We've been on this journey for some time now. We're about halfway through the book. We're glad that you join us. We have a long way to go. A lot of good things are yet to come. So we just ask that you would stay with us and enjoy the rest of the ride. It's going to be wonderful, and I guarantee you that the best is yet to come. Also, before I forget, we're offering you an opportunity if you have questions that come up during the study and you would like us to address them on the air. You can send us an email to office@porthuronchurchofchrist.org. That's office@porthuronchurchofchrist.org. And in the subject line, just put Job and then write your question, and we will answer that question on the air. Now, looking back at, chapter 21. I said 20. We're actually going to start in 21 today. Last week, we listened to Job speak to Zophar. If you recall, when Job had addressed Bildad, Zophar, in listening to the discussion or the rhetoric, didn't like what he heard. He was disturbed and basically insulted by the accusations that Job made. And so he kind of teed off on Job a little bit, because we established long ago that Zophar wasn't the nice guy of the three. He had no compassion. He just hit you in the forehead and let you have it. He wasn't as easy as Eliphaz, and probably was the younger of the three. And so anyway, now Job comes back last week in chapter 21 and responds back to Zophar. And all we had time to do was just to read the words of Job. I want to go back, if you don't mind, and look at those words again. But this time, instead of reading them the way we did, I just want to kind of give you a commentary a bit about what's going on and how Job is handling the argument of Zophar in a little bit different way. So we're going to, instead of just reading the text, we're going to actually look at the text of Job in comparison to what Zophar said to him, and you'll see it in a little bit different light, I think, okay? So why don't we go ahead and get started at this point? So we understand that in verses 1 and 2, Job said, "Listen to me." And he told Zophar, he said, "Look, I've listened to you long enough. Now you have to listen to me for a change." And to his credit, I think Job was much more patient with all of this than many of us would have been. Imagine now, these guys, as I have said in the past, are coming after Job one after another. As soon as one finishes, another one starts. And this has been going on for quite some time now. And to his credit, Job always allows his friend to speak, uninterrupted. And even though Zophar was a little mean to him and short, he still gave him the same courtesy. And now he's telling him, even though you're hurting me with your words, I'm still going to respect you enough to let you finish. But now I am going to talk, and you are going to listen. And what you're going to hear in Job is that he's not going to hold back in the things that he has to say to Zophar. In verses 3 through 6, and I hope you're kind of just referencing your Bible as I am talking, And Job no longer expect any sympathy, but only the opportunity at this point to be heard. Sympathy has left this conversation long ago. This has turned out to become more of a theological debate than it is a moment of sympathizing with a person in great agony. Remember, Job is suffering still, and this gets lost, don't you think? When you think about this conversation and the twists and turns it's taking, what has gotten lost is Job's physical condition. You know, when they walked up, he was scraping himself from all of these sores on himself, and he still has these. Nothing has changed in Job's physical being, and now these guys have got him so riled up that even in spite of the way he feels physically, he is still not letting them get the best of him emotionally and intellectually. He's still holding his ground, and he's going to continue to do so. So he starts out and says, look, my complaint, you guys are coming at me, but my complaint really isn't with men. My complaint is and always really has been with God. You guys are getting in the way of this. I told you at the very beginning that I didn't want to live anymore. I wish the day of my birth was cursed, and I'm okay with dying because I'm in agony. But I'm talking among you, but really my conversation and my issue with God. And the reason why he did this, because he realized that his friends can't help him. There's nothing they can do for him. Only God can help him, but to this point, God hasn't answered. And he's growing impatient. And the longer it takes God to respond to Job, the worse Job's situation becomes. And he tells his friends to look at him. So obviously when he asked that or made that request, his appearance is horrible. And it's so horrible that Zophar, even though he was accusing him of all of these things and speaking so terribly about Job, had a hard time just looking at him. He's still seeing through the eyes of being evil and had no compassion on him as a human being. And he said to Zophar, he said, look, I want you to look at me when you talk to me. Talk to my face. Instead of standing there and judging me at a distance or murmuring about me behind my back. And so now we want to look at the 3 points made by Zophar and the way that Job refutes those 3 points. The first thing that Zophar said was, if you recall that from last week, that the wicked don't live long. And in verse number 7, Job said that sometimes the wicked do live long lives. And Job reminded Zophar that sometimes the wicked prosper. They don't all die off at an early age, but live long lives and have good health and success. People don't necessarily suffer on earth just because they aren't godly. And he's telling Zophar, he said, I think you're wrong in the way that you look at this. Now, if you drop down to verses 17 through 19, you'll find him address the second point of Zophar. He said, the counsel of the wicked is far from me, or rather, far be it from me, perhaps meaning this. He said, do not misunderstand me. He said, I maintain that the wicked are often prospered, and that God does not, in this life, deal with them according to what they deserve. They have life and health and property. And as he said this, his point wasn't to defend the wicked, only making an observation that God doesn't act exactly the way you guys are saying God acts 100% of the time across the board. He said, but in making this point, I want you to understand that I, for 1 minute, am not their advocate. I don't defend any of them of what they do or how they live. He said, I do not counsel them, neither on any of their plans. Actually, to be honest, I have no sympathy for them. Now, in saying all of this, what Job is actually doing now is driving a wedge between his life and existence and situation and that of the wicked. They saw Job's statements as being together with the wicked and included with the wicked because he was wicked and therefore being one of them. But Job has said, no. Not only are you incorrect in what you said about the wicked in their life and the things of God, you don't know God at all is what he's really coming down to. He said, I'm nothing like them. And he's driving this wedge to make his point. He says, but I maintain merely that your position is not correct, that they are always subjected to, that they're not always subjected to calamity, and the character of people can also be known by the dealings of providence toward them. They were in fact prospered. He said, but though they were prospered, Job says, I have nothing to do with them. I'm just merely making a point against what you're saying, that you're wrong. He said, I would prefer a holy life with all of its ills than one like them. Basically, and I love that he said this, because this is something that a lot of Christians wrestle with. Do I want to live a holy life that pleases God and take with that holy life all of the unpleasant things that sometimes come with it? And you say, Lamar, well, what comes with it? Well, golly, I'm glad you asked that. What do you do as a Christian when someone in the world out there stands there in public, in a store or wherever, and curses you out? Now, if I curse back at them as your answer, I would say that's the wrong one. You may want to rethink that one. Because God doesn't give us permission. Or when someone does something to you that in a normal way, a carnal way of a human thinking, you would go after them and get them back for what they did. And then you're reminded as a Christian that God said, vengeance is mine. I will repay. Or, what of you, and we don't have that problem in this country, but they do in other places. What if you were incarcerated just because you were a believer and a follower of Jesus? Now you have a choice. You can leave Jesus and be free, or you can maintain your trust and walk with him and suffer the consequences. And sometimes it's beatings, sometimes it's imprisonment, sometimes it's death. So the life of a Christian is not always good, is what I'm saying. And it rarely is what we would call fair. But here's the kicker. God constantly reminds us, he said, this world is not your home. Don't let the things of the world get you caught up so that you lose sight of me. Hold on to me. I'll get you through this, because this is what makes heaven so sweet. None of this is going to be there. None of those people are going to be there throughout eternity. So God says to us in so many ways, whatever you endure, you got an evil neighbor that regardless what you do, all they do is curse you and try to make life miserable for you. It's only for a short time. And then when you go home, That's eternity. You'll never deal with that again. Tolerate it. You're in prison, tolerate it. It's for a short time. They're beating you, tolerate it. But if you leave God in the process of these things, I feel like I'm preaching now. Huh? If you leave God in the process of these moments, then you have nothing. And that's what the point is that Job is making. I'd rather suffer as being a Christian, as one that's doing right by God, than to be one that lives in this life full of all of the riches and the luxury and everything that some of the rich and some of the wicked have in their greed, knowing that in the end, God's going to make them vomit all of it up. It's going to leave them, and when they are in the dust, they'll be in the dust alone, in the grave by themselves, and have nothing. See, for us, when we're in the grave, we have everything. We have it all. And that's the point that he's trying to bring Zophar to, and which makes him different than them. He said, I'll take my holy life with its ills any day over what you're talking about. So how can you say that I am of the wicked? Now this is what we're going to hear from Job in verses 17 through 26. And Job had described the prosperity of wicked people. In these verses, he proposes this in opposition to what his friends had maintained about their certain ruin in this life. So he's going to kind of recalibrate their thinking here, and he reconciles this to the holiness and justice of God. See, they were looking at the rule, and they came with this rule. Remember when we talked about the triangle of tensions, where you have the principle, the retribution principle here that says the righteous are blessed and prospered, the wicked are punished. And they're looking at Job still out of that lens and said, Job, we kind of see you messed up here, buddy. You've done something wrong. And they don't leave that position throughout the entire conversation. They maintain that, and the only way that they can make that work, now they have one, as I said, they have one angle or one corner of the triangle. Now they have to choose a second one. Is God just, or is Job righteous? And they said, well, certainly we're not going with you, Job. We're sticking with God. So apparently God is giving you what you deserve because he's just. So you've done something wrong. And they're maintaining this. And Job is now saying, wait a minute, guys. He said, what about God's holiness and justice? You've forgotten about that. He said, even while they prosper, he's talking about the evil people, they are light and worthless, of no account with God or with wise men, meaning that they don't have a relationship with God just because they're prospered. That's not how you judge that. Now, that's a statement. Because how many times have you seen a person get a new car and the first thing they put on the license plate, I'm blessed because I got a new car. I got a new house. I'm blessed. I'm better than you because you have that old car. God gave me a new car. And Job said, that's not how this works. You're misunderstanding God's justice. Because the Bible said he reigns on the just as well as the unjust. And he said, in the height of their pomp and power, there is but a step. And get this, I love this part. There's a step between them and ruin. One step, and it's all gone. And he's making a difference between one wicked man and another and the wisdom of God. Saying that God is the judge of all the earth, and he will do what's right. We don't have to question that. We don't have to wonder, is God doing right? God only does what's right. He says, so vast is the disproportion between time and eternity. And I think this is a point that we sometimes miss, that if hell be the lot of every sinner at last, it makes little difference if he goes singing and another sighing. If one wicked man die in a palace and another in a dungeon, the worm that dies not, and the fire is that is not quenched will be the same to both of them. Basically, what it's saying is this: listen, you can't make that statement. Some evil, wicked people live long, happy lives and they die. Some evil, wicked people live horrible lives and they die. It doesn't matter. In the end, they die. And that's the only thing that matters here. He said the difference in this world is really not even getting concerned about. Did you hear that? In this world. Job is looking at something beyond what they're saying. So in the second statement of Zophar said the pleasures of the wicked are temporary. For the wicked, you, Job, they face an early death. And that's where Job said in 17 and 19 that they don't suffer a calamity. How often is the lamp of the wicked put out, or does their calamity fall on them? Does God apportion destruction in his anger? Are they a straw before the wind? Are they a straw before the storm that carries it away? You say God stores away a man's iniquity for his sons. Let God repay him so that he may know. Now in Zophar's third point, we're going to look at verses 22 to 25. Let me, before we get there, let me read something for you from this 19 that I just thought about. He says about, in verse 19, he said, it is said, God stores up the punishment of the wicked for their children. Let him repay the wicked so that they themselves will experience it. Now, Job goes on to say the truth was far different from what they maintain, that there was no such exact distribution of punishment, but that one died in full strength and another died in the bitterness of his soul, but they both are dead. That's basically what we've been saying. That he rewards him, and he should know it. That is, you maintain that God will certainly reward him in this life, and that his dealings with him shall exactly express the divine view of his conduct, that he shall certainly know what God thinks of his conduct, so of his character. So what he's saying is this: what you receive in life, in this life, is the way God sees you. So if you are prospered, it sees you, God is saying that you're a good guy. If you suffer and are punished, God is telling you that you're wicked. So what he's saying, from a distance, by default, we can look at you and tell, Job, you've sinned because of your condition. They keep trying to come back to this argument. And this is the opinion that they have maintained throughout the entire time that they have been talking to Job. Remember what I said way at the beginning, when the three of them first walked up and saw Job and realized his condition, their hearts went out to Job, but they had made up in their mind that Job had sinned at that point. And from that point on, their goal was simply to convince Job that he has sinned and he needs to fix it with God. And that's been this entire argument. And what's going to happen now is that they're going to finally, at the end of round 3, they're going to give up and say, you know what, you're a waste of time. We can't talk to you. You won't listen. You're hard-headed. And so, you know what? So be it. Suffer. That's pretty much what they're going to tell him. But that's not the way it's going to end. And we all well know that. So stay with me now. We have about 5 more minutes. Maybe I'll take 10 if you don't mind. And we'll try to finish up our thoughts of chapter 21. So let's see if we can move ahead here and look at Zophar's third and final point, and then we'll end. Zophar said the suffering is always the result of God's judgment of the wicked. So in verses 22 to 25, Job reminded Zophar that often the death of a wicked is no different from the death of other men. So here it is. One person dies in full vigor, completely secure and at ease, well-nourished in body, bones rich with marrow. Another dies in bitterness of soul, never having enjoyed anything good. And side by side, they lay in the dust and worms cover over them. And isn't that life? That's the way we all understand life. And that's what people get caught up in. Is life fair? No, life is life. There's no, is life fair or unfair? It's just what it is. Some people prosper regardless how wicked they are, and other people don't prosper regardless how wicked they are. It's just what it is, and that's the point. What Job picked up on also that Zophar said was this eating metaphor that Zophar introduced earlier. But he maintained that some people live long lives getting fat on succulent food, while others live difficult lives begging for crumbs. But his point is, and Job's point is, that death comes to all. And now Job is criticizing Zophar's misguided counsel in verses 30 through 34. He told Zophar, he said, look, your theology is too simplistic. It doesn't mesh with reality. He said, I'm not in the category of the wicked. The wicked, he said, Job saw that the wicked are righteous. Some die comfortable and wealthy, as I said, and while some die bitter and in anguish. And only God understands the reason why. That's the point that Job's making here. And that's the point that we have to accept. There's no explanation for this. Only God knows the reason why. And contrary to the words of Zophar, the reality is that those who love God don't always live long. And not only that, their lives are not always outwardly blessed. And the wicked don't always live short, miserable lives. And so it doesn't seem fair, but, and this is where we're going to land today on this point. This is the point where we have to get to. This is the point that we have to accept. This is the point that will carry us over any terrain that life takes us, through anything that we have to endure. This is the point that will take us there. We can always trust God and His wisdom in every situation. You know, God allows His children to get in some bad situations. But He allows it for their good. Now, as parents, we kind of say, wait a minute now. How would I allow that? And a good parent knows that some things that seem bad on the surface are the best thing that their child needs to help them in the future. See, the role of God is not to make us happy. I get tired of people saying that. God wants us holy. And inside of our holiness, happiness lives. But just on the surface to be happy, God would be Santa Claus. God would be a bank. God would be everything carnal that would fulfill our eyes and our greed if that was the case. But holiness is something different. Holiness stands in the face of evil. Holiness stands firm regardless. And that's what God is calling his children to be. And we, as his children now, must trust him that whatever God is allowing us to go through, it is, even though it may hurt us in this life, it's going to ensure for us our eternity with him. And when you weigh those two things together, there's no comparison. God is saying your time on earth is but one tick of a clock. And eternity is the rest of the clock. It doesn't compare. So as we leave Job today with that thought in mind, step back from your life and take a look again. Do you complain about things that you don't like? Are you harboring anger toward God because of something you had to go through that you didn't particularly like that you went through? And my question to you as you went through that, did you go through it by yourself or did you rely on God to carry you through it? That's what he's trying to tell us. Your hard moments, footprints. He carries us. And sometimes we get so wrapped up and caught up in ourselves, we don't even realize that it was God that brought us through it. And that's what the point is that he's trying to bring us to. Remember, he always works to the good of his children. Even if he has to spank them, he's spanking them out of love, because God would rather spank you and allow you to enjoy the eternity of heaven with him than to lose you because he wouldn't discipline you. Boy, you know what? There's some parents today need to listen to that thought and do that with their children. And maybe the society will look a whole lot different. I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for this moment that we had to share together. Thank God for just teaching us and helping us to see the world in a little bit different way. And that's what we get from the book of Job. God bless you, and we'll see you right here next week. Until then, be safe.